Alright guys, welcome to the Monthly Cup 15. Massive apologies for the delay. Just a few technical issues, but we are here to bring you the first match. And we're not going to waste any time here, Scorch. We're going to get right into it.
All right, I'm going to ready up and we'll get these players right in. Again, we've had this delay and, I'm sure these guys are just itching, ready to get going here.
Yep, and we have Lou90 versus R2R as the first match. Lou90 second place, the runner-up of our previous monthly cup, going against R2R, one of the up-and-coming Japanese players, I believe.
Yeah, relatively new name to the Faeria, at least the competitive side. Played through one of the qualifiers in July and then qualified for last month's monthly cup and lost out in the quarterfinals to Lou. Lou taking that series 3-1, so I'm sure he'll be out for revenge here, but definitely a new up-and-coming face that it looks like we're going to be kind of seeing over and over again in the monthly cups to come.
Yeah, R2R definitely making his mark on the scene, being a consistent competitor at the top end of competitive Faeria. And actually, as mentioned in the recent Faeria Friday, that we have a lot of Asian representatives in the monthly cup.
Yeah, a lot of, more than I think we've had in any other monthly cup before.
Yeah, we've got representatives from Korea, Japan. I believe we might have some from China as well. We can actually take a quick look at the bracket while the players are selecting a deck. So we have like R2R, Sunkichi, Gelgoog, SKC representing Japan. We have South Korea represented by Dompork. Let me see if I can see anyone else. K-Holic representing South Korea as well. So no representatives from China this time. We have had some in the past. So it looks like Japan and South Korea really coming into this tournament in storm.
Yeah, I'm going to point out in the top left corner there, facing against one of those Asian representatives, Happy Joe, we have a new Canadian to the monthly cup, Moonfasa, making his debut.
Oh, wow, Moonfasa. Do you know much about him? Or is he just a completely new face?
No, completely new face to me. I believe qualified through the second qualifier, but actually took a God ranking spot here. So facing off against Happy Joe, who both qualified through the second qualifier and faced each other there. So it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out.
Yeah, we're just waiting on Lou and R2R to get ready for this tournament game. There are quite a few spicy matches in round one here. We have S of Dawn at the top, taking on one of the Japanese representatives, Jay Yori. So S of Dawn is our previous monthly cup champion. Mayhem versus Alvar. I bet that match is going to be absolutely heated. Alvar definitely making his splash on the competitive scene as well.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of really high-profile matches, especially down in that bottom left corner of the bracket. But we do have both of the players ready now, so let's, without further delay, get into game number one.
So Lou has a wealth of experience in Faeria, probably one of the biggest influences when it comes to meta shifts with his stream and YouTube. R2R, like we said, one of the new and up-and-coming competitive players. And it looks like a very interesting green build from Lou. Deepwood Grizzly.
Yeah, it almost looks like a green rush with what he's gone for here. We'll have to see what the other cards are that he brings out, but charging right down the middle, I'm definitely expecting, we're going to see that Explore Forest next turn into the Deepwood Grizzly, and that's going to get at what looks like an early Windstorm Charger from R2R very early. It might cause a lot of problems.
And there could be a potential diamond setup here with the Air Elemental. That is an option here. And Green Rush is an interesting choice, and I think I know Lou's mentality. Recently, Red Control has been all over the ladder. Lots of red, so green is a very good answer to that if you want to, snipe that specific matchup.
Yeah, and it also leaves you open to play still a rush archetype to get in at some of these slower, more land development focused decks, while still having, maybe your red control open or your yellow tempo, something like that open, without taking those cards away and playing those as your rush archetypes.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how well Green Rush is going to do. I think it's quite a brave selection as your opening deck for the monthly cup. It's not an archetype that has had much representation in the Oversky, and Lou must be pretty confident with this build if he's willing to open with it.
Yeah, and I think something else, depending on what you play against, if you know what or if you can read into what your opponent's starting with, even a green rush, it still has some of these bigger creatures that you can reset the board and play a slower game if you think you're going to be able to win that way. But especially with the starting hand that Lou has here, he's going to be looking to push the aggression as quick as possible and just hoping that R2R doesn't have any Last Nightmare, something along those lines coming out next turn.
An Imperial Drain as well can go straight into the forest in the middle, getting some aggressive lands down. Deepwood Grizzly going to come down. Imperial Drain following up, lock out those Faeria wells, starve R2R of Faeria. Now he has a rather big Grizzly to deal with.
Yeah, really nice pickup there of the Imperial Drain. Big thing for R2R there is because this Air Elemental has flying, if he's able to get it over into the side double collecting, that's going to be big income over the course of the game to keep up with the aggression from Lou and start to swing the board back to his advantage. But not picking up a Choking Sand there, really unfortunate, because that would have been a huge swing against this early Deepwood Grizzly.
I really like the land developed there of R2R, locking out those aggressive lands on the wells and towards his orb on the right-hand side, knowing there's no soul drains or Cypher's Wraths coming down to answer that 4-2, so just making things kind of awkward for Lou. And that Manta Rider was actually a fantastic pickup, a very durable, sticky creature that's going to take a few hits to take care of.
Yeah, once you get that extra 2/2 Manta coming down in behind, it again can be your fly it off to the far side and have it collecting. Unfortunately now with the Imperial Drain up, that won't be the case, but maybe next turn he'll be able to have this 2/2 that, again, because you mentioned there's no Cypher's Wrath, there's no Soul Drain, there's no small damage removal coming out from a green rush. Lou's going to struggle to keep up if R2R is able to get one of these creatures kind of flying off to the far side uncontested.
And another Deepwood Grizzly coming down as well, just trying to apply pressure, getting some board presence, going for the forest on the right-hand side on that well, so potential collector in the future if he needs to slow things down, but more so probably for the forest, so he has access to potential Elderwood Embraces next turn, or a follow-up green creature. But for R2R, he has didn't pick up a Wind Soldier. Wind Soldier would have been really clean there, just to take care of that last life on the Grizzly.
Yeah, that would have been a really nice pickup. Unfortunately, R2R right now really limited by this Imperial Drain. If he's able to collect a couple times over the course of the past 2 turns, he's in a spot where he's able to continue to put more creatures on board or just start drawing. And picking up that Windborn Champion's really awkward because it doesn't put anything immediately down onto the board, and because he went for that double land block last turn, like you were mentioning, he doesn't have the ability to have those deserts all this turn. So Lou picking up every single buff that he needs right now.
And goes for the draw there, so R2R had to develop that desert just to be able to get that Windborn Champion down, and wasn't punished for it by an aggressive land next to his orb. Lou kind of whiffed on the draw, had to go for the draw from the power wheel, found just another power-up unfortunately, and now R2R's collecting Faeria and getting back into this match.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things of Green Rush. As much as any other rush, really, you want to get your 2 special lands down in aggressive positions, and then you just draw every single turn. But something like Yellow Rush sometimes does run maybe 1 or 2 Last Nightmares, so you have to get that desert, that third desert at some point. Green Rush, I don't believe, runs anything past the 2 forests, so every single turn from here on out, we should see Lou draw, unless he needs that extra 1 Faeria for a double buff or something along those lines.
I mean, Crystal Flower could definitely be an option for Green Rush, but then you're going up to 4 forests, so you might as well get the 5th forest down and play Thorian Golem, and then are you even playing Rush at that point? So, yeah, you have to also consider that Pantheon format only allows you to have 3 Crystal Flowers across your entire lineup, so does other archetypes in your lineup need that card? So you have to be very careful when you're deck building, and so far, even though Lou's had this really clunky kind of super power-up based hand, which would have been great against red control, he is holding out. The Imperial Drain did a lot of work there in stopping R2R from snowballing when it comes to economy.
Yeah, and in this position, Lou continues to not use those buffs. He's been very fortunate to get both of these, or I should say all 3 of these Grizzlies early enough into the game here. A really nice movement play by R2R, but Lou in a position where he's not going to put all of the buffs onto one creature because you don't want that to get Last Nightmare and then you just lose the game. You want to continue to split the buffs evenly across everything. Just in a position now where he's possibly just got to clear the Windborn Champion instead of pushing orb damage. And this might be because of that great movement from R2R, the real swing turn.
Yeah, I like the clear on the champion here. Just try and starve your opponent at Faeria. There's no point in really trying to race right now. You have Runin's Guidance in hand. You can get some sustain from that, build on some healing. So that's pretty much fine. I think it's a good shout, going for the Elderwood here, going to the left side, clearing that double collector, and then trying to push a lot of damage next to him, potentially with other power-ups.
Yeah, and a big thing is whether Lou wants to go for something like the Tiki Caretaker or the Elderwood Embrace here. You can get that Caretaker down and then move it into a double collection spot and then continue to have those that Faeria income to double buff next turn or something along those lines. But that forces you to make lands. So in that position, you don't really want to go for that because you want to continue to draw like we've been saying. So I'd more likely be expecting to see an Elderwood Embrace here come out onto the Deepwood Grizzly, but Lou in a really tough spot where I wonder if he is just thinking about how much damage he can do next turn to go for a 2-turn lethal here.
He might actually have to do it. I think the only issue I have with going for a damage push here is you just give your opponent so much Faeria by allowing that champion, and one more movement trick and that's 10 damage at your orb. So you have to respect it, that it's a very mobile creature, can collect a lot of Faeria and push a lot of damage with one card. And we can see 10 life on Lou now as this Manta Rider pushes more damage, and now the Windstorm Charger comes down. R2R has become the aggressor when he is more of a control style deck.
Yeah, something that can happen with this style of a deck is you have all these extra movement tools to get around whatever your opponent is doing and get to their orb very quickly. We saw the Flashwind Windborn Champion do exactly that with the Manta Rider and get it into an uncontested aggressive position instead of just trading low. Again, Lou picks up a Queensguard here, got a difficult decision of whether he goes for something like +1 Faeria, play that Queensguard defensively, whether he develops an aggressive land so he can hit with all three of his creatures here, or whether he goes for a draw and look for something else, whether it's something like maybe a Silent Horsemaster to pull the Tiki Caretaker back defensively, but does go for the draw after all.
And the Runin's Shrine is a really nice addition to rush decks. It basically gives you an option to get like a burst of Faeria and develop more power-ups, develop more creatures. It's a very nice card. I do like it a lot in the rush builds. And it looks
very cool. Sorry, very cool with this style as well, because Lou's also playing the Imperial Drain. You can Imperial Drain so that your opponent can't collect, and then Runin's Shrine so that you get that extra Faeria income as well. So very cool to see both of those complementary structures played in this style of deck.
Yeah, and it looks like the Queensguard, very interesting addition to a green rush deck. Choking Sands, that's going to munch it up very nicely. They're going to be able to push 9 damage this turn. Oh man, you must be thinking, do you crack open this shrine to be able to push a Soul Drain on something just to heal if you're afraid of dying next turn? Because there is potential lethals.
Really difficult here. Lou is going to collect 1 Faeria. That means, maybe he can... Well, you can't even +1 though, because he still needs to develop that extra land for the Grizzly. I don't see a way that Lou gets to 2 buffs here. So healing up to 16, or even just healing to 15 and clearing that Tiki Caretaker looks very guaranteed to be able to survive this next attack round by Lou.
You'd need to have another Runin Shrine, and then, yeah, you probably would just need another Runin Shrine to dodge lethal at this point. To get lethal as Lou. So I think R2 needs to figure out, if another shrine comes down, I'm going to lose because 2 power-ups kill me. But what is the likelihood of 2 power-ups and a shrine and being able to develop land, so if the shrine isn't picked up, there is no opportunity for lethal anymore. And it looks like it's going for the safe play.
Yeah, and another big thing by making this play is it actually frees up a space in front of the orb. Okay, I thought he was going to run out of time there. Looks like he actually stepped over as well. Okay, so did block that spot. I was going to say if R2R kept the Storm Charger there on the desert, that freed up that land right in front of Lu's orb, where he could have body blocked with something like the Mace Man that we see in hand, even just the Imperial Drain, and that forces R2R to draw into some form of a movement trick there, but very nicely does move the Charger over and blocks that himself, so that he's able to then move it into the right position next turn.
It's really sad that Lu doesn't have one more Faeria. I'd love to see Elderwood into Emperor's Command this turn as a heal, and then just like be able to push a massive amount of damage, try and guarantee lethal next turn. I think it's fine just going for, you know, the push for 11 damage, heal, gain 4 life, and then just see if your opponent can win the race. Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, he is going to go for the power-up. Okay.
Interesting.
So he has
I was definitely expecting to see the Mace Man come down defensively, but...
Well, he has guaranteed lethal with Elderwood Embrace on just the one Grizzly next turn. So I think this is going to be it. I'm not sure if R2R can win from here. No, he doesn't have enough resources.
No, and the Imperial Drain does the job there. We saw the first one do really nice to block the Faeria income, and even though R2R wasn't in a collection position, playing the second one there from Lu meant even if, you know, Flash Winds were drawn, R2R couldn't hit the orb and then use those movement tricks to run away to collect and get up to that last Nightmare spot. So really well played by Lu in that situation to play slow, even though he's playing a rush deck, and every single movement of stepping the Grizzlies back and then stepping them forward was absolutely calculated.
Yeah, I mean, it was looking pretty bad for Lu in the early game. You know, I felt like R2R had some fantastic answers to the early aggression, and then R2R made that decision to go in with the Manta Rider using the mobility from the Windborn Champion. But the only issue with that play after watching that match was he left his Windborn Champion in a position where it could be cleared by the Grizzly, so he lost economy, and then he was forced into a race position. You know, the yellow control couldn't fall back to a kind of more collection control in style because the commitment had already been made to make that race, and it looks like the rush deck's going to win a race sometimes, you know? If you're a control player and you're trying to race a rush deck, you have to understand that the rush player has more tools to win races.
Yeah, and that was really Green Rush winning the game by healing for 9 in the end with the Ruden's Guidance and the Emperor's Command. So really well played game there by Lu. And we actually see a green come out from R2R that had a Gift of the Rakoa, a new card from the Oversky expansion, coming into what I would expect is more of a mid-range green style.
Yeah, mono green again picking up in popularity due to the presence of red combat and red control. You know, been making a lot of waves on ladder, but that is a Soul Eater, so this could just be some green-yellow sacrifice variant. Runin,
yeah,
very
stable. Interesting. So yeah, I would expect that then we're going to see the Skyax in here as well. Also very good with Gift of the Rakoa because you're able to get so many of them onto the board. I'm very surprised with Living Willow in hand that R2R went for the Earthcraft and basically revealed that he's now playing green-yellow sack, because that's a position where he didn't need to play that desert yet unless he has... he's expecting to get some of those creatures out next turn, but again, the early Imperial Drain coming down from Lu.
Yeah, that information is going to be very valuable to Lu, because now Lu kind of has an idea of what he could expect. The longer you can keep that information secret, the better, and I really like this line from Lu. You saw the Deepwood Grizzly being highlighted, then he thought, wait a minute, if I'm going to be hitting this Willow, I want to get some value, and the Queen's Guard is going to give 1 Faeria every time it's in combat, so again, just getting value off that low attack, high life creature.
Yeah, and again, getting value off of this Imperial Drain. He's stopping R2R from collecting, and by having the Queen's Guard down, he's going to trigger that combat and gain his own Faeria income. So this is a very well-designed rush deck coming out from Lu. Everything just complements itself.
This is a nice Tiki Caretaker. It's going to push the Living Willow up to a 3/9. It could take a preemptive hit on the Queen's Guard and try and kill it in the next turn, but it looks like R2R passes. He doesn't want any other tricks coming from Lu. Maybe double power-up is a concern. Speaking of power-ups, here's one. And now Lu is going to take the initiative here in this combat. And he's going to live to tell the tale currently, unless there's another power-up and we do see a Gift of Rakoa in hand.
Yeah, Gift of Krakoa will be just enough here. Possibly some thought to +1 Runen in this situation because R2R then can, combo that Runen into being bigger and bigger to contest everything else that Lu is going to play. But playing this style of deck, playing green yellow sack, you always want to continue to develop your lands. It's just in this situation, the Soul Eater is a 1/1, so you don't necessarily have to keep going for the fact that you could get it down next turn.
Yeah, I mean, how much pressure are you really under right now? Setting up an early Runin to keep recycling its power up could be very valuable against a rush deck. It's just a reusable creature that gets more powerful every time it dies, and then eventually it's going to get to a state where a green rush player is not going to be able to handle it anymore.
Yeah, and also has the dash so you can block certain positions as well. But now R2 are really forced to it, drawing another Soul Eater, just drawing all of his late game creatures early in the game. Really unfortunate.
Yeah, Soul Eater is not going to have much influence just yet. More creatures need to die in order for them to get powered up to a level where they're worth playing. Like I would play a 5/5 Soul Eater, especially in a double collection position. I mean, that's worthwhile because it'll refund to Faeria of its cost if it gets a double collect on the following turn. But right now, R2R's only real option is probably Runin. You could protect the Tiki Caretaker if you don't mind taking damage this turn and just dash it in front. Or dash in front of your orb if you're afraid there's going to be some burst.
Yeah, going for the draw means he now has to play Runin. Nothing else was picked up. I don't really mind keeping it in front of the Caretaker here just because the Imperial Drain is now dead. So that Caretaker collecting once means you can then +1 Soul Eater every single turn once you get to those land developments. So I'm very interested in the Iona's Smile in Artur's hand right now just because I wonder if that is designed only to draw the Soul Eaters in the late game or if he has something like the Flower Silk Fairies as well in there. Just some other flying creature. I'm just not sure what it would be.
Maybe Skyak? Or one of Iona's Smile. You can search type Skyak.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. That's would feed into the Gift of Krakoa in this deck. Would make a lot of sense to tutor for those Skyaks.
It seems this deck is trying to do two things. It's trying to use kind of like the economy and the power-ups of mono green, but also have a bit of green yellow sack in it as well. That's what I can see so far from what we've seen from this list.
Lu's choices right now, I lean more towards +1 Verduran Force, but does have the ability to go something like Elderwood Embrace and then Runen's Shrine to get the... I guess you could +1 in Grizzly as well and just start to push as much damage as possible, but...
I like that line. I like the pressure line. A 5/12 isn't easy to deal with. Chuck another Grizzly down as well, so worst case scenario, this 5/12 gets Nightmared. You still have a creature left, and to be fair, R2R doesn't even have the land or the Faeria to drop a last Nightmare right now. I don't know how this current hand with 3 Soul Eaters deals with a 5/12 Grizzly.
Yeah, it's very difficult there. Now the 5 attack is enough that Runin can trade into it, and then R2R could just +1 Fairy and play Runin again as the 6/6. It still, isn't that great because it doesn't block anything. You're still going to take 8 damage next turn. You're possibly going to take more if Lu picks up another buff here, but it's just really awkward right now for R2R of having these Soul Eaters in hand is not what you want at this stage of the game.
Yeah, it's kind of a losing hand, unfortunately. Flash Salmon, okay. So, Flash Salmon is a very cool card, but just not a very relevant card at this point. Runin's going to move into a blocking position. This actually opens up the 3/8 Grizzly to take care of that 1/1, stop a collection, push some damage. +1 into Mace Man, so the pressure just keeps coming, and R2R is really struggling to keep a hold of this match.
Yeah, I really like the quick play from Lu there. A lot of times you see the players, wait, even if they have a very obvious line already set out with their hand, we still see them wait and make a decision and plan out even 2 or 3 turns ahead. But Lu right there knows how much pressure he has, and if he can put R2R on the back foot of not giving him Lu's full turn timer as well to think, he can maybe put him in a position where he makes a misplay, but a really nice clear onto the Mace Man, and now the Living Willow picked up, and another Living Willow will allow R2R probably to stabilize pretty well here.
Yeah, nice little sequence there from R2R, using that Flash Salmon to clear out the Mace Man, and also, being able to get a defensive creature down. And there is another defensive creature following up next to him in the Willow, but the double power-up, two very bulky Grizzlies here, making life very awkward for R2R. And the Faeria Starving is really starting to show. He doesn't have cheap reactive cards in hand, he has expensive finishers, and it's really starting to hurt.
I'm actually really surprised that Lou went for that buff, because he split, instead of putting the front Grizzly up to 7 attack and clearing the Living Willow in 1 hit and then pushing 3 more damage, he put both to 5 here, which again plays around that removal, but I don't think R2R would have had a possibility of getting to a state where he had removal there again, so yeah, looked a little awkward there.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think the idea was, I don't want my Grizzly to die to the Runin and give it value, so I'll take a slower line while my opponents starve to Faeria, and then see what answers come out. And as we can see, R2R, really struggling to find answers. And Feed the Forest is kind of a slap in the face there after losing 2 Willows in combat, and you're like, oh, I drew my economy card, great. I've lost my economy creatures.
Yeah, and this would actually be really nice if Runin could trade into the Mace Man, because then you could go for that trade, play the second Runin as a 6/6, +1 Faeria up to Feed the Forest, and then you cycle and you could play Runin again, really. But it looks like it's just going to be Body Block and Hope, because we know that Lou is running Emperor's Command. That could be the lethal find.
Oof, and there's another guidance, so more power-ups are able to be pumped up into these creatures. Might see a ball control line here. I wouldn't mind that at all if... Oh, no. Doesn't go for the ball control. Oh, just going for the lethal.
Very nice.
And there we have it. Lou taking another round with this very interesting Grizzly Green, I'm going to call it for now. Because we've seen a lot of Grizzlies. More Grizzlies than I think we've ever seen in a monthly cup in this one game.
Yeah, Lou's been very fortunate to get those. Should not really even say it that way, because he had the Mace Man. The Queensguard start was actually beautiful compared to starting with a Grizzly, and even the Verteran Force in there. All of these green creatures are so difficult to deal with in the early game when they're a turn or 2 away from your orb on, turn 2 or 3.
I think we should give some credit to R2R. He made the best of a bad situation. And he drawing all your finishers, drawing all those Soul Eaters in the early game is really sad as a control player, as a green-yellow sack player. And he made the best of a bad hand, and unfortunately just wasn't enough for the pressure of the Deepwood Grizzly who returns to lose hand for the 3rd time.
Yeah, I'm actually not even sure if Lou just doesn't keep both the buffs, and he does keep both buffs there. He should know at this stage he's probably facing red. Mono blue we really haven't seen for a little bit now. It almost seems like it's in one of the weaker states that it's been in quite some time. So you're probably expecting to see red, and just because combat red has been so strong as well, Lou reading into what his opponent has as the final deck and just going for, I'll keep all the buffs because you're not going to be able to deal with this Grizzly.
Yeah, you can just wait a turn now, go explore into Forest, drop a second Forest next turn, into Grizzly, into power-ups. I actually don't really like Grizzly now, because you're kind of making your hand quite dead on the follow-up play if it gets answered. Unfortunately, there isn't an answer for R2R, but say there was Cypher's Wrath, double Cypher's Wrath, for example. This would actually kind of make things quite clunky for Lou going into his next turn.
Yeah, having all of the buffs and only one creature, you need to ensure that that's going to survive. I would not have been surprised if he held off on the Grizzly there, but playing into where your opponent only has 1 out this early into the game, Lou feels fine going for that.
To be fair, Lou is in a position where he can make high-risk, high-reward plays because he's 2-0 up in this series, and he has a good matchup here against Mono Red because of this power-heavy rush build. But if he was to lose this match somehow, there would be also 2 other decks that would run the gauntlet against this red control. So I guess Lou's just thinking, you know what? If he has it, he has it. If he doesn't, I still if I draw 1 creature, I'm able to mega power it up a lot, and it probably can't be answered.
Yeah, Lou definitely in a power position going forward for the series. Again, if he loses, he can counter with whatever he wants for the next game. So, R2R in a tough position still. Maybe you go for the Underground Boss or Ground Shaker on the far side. Looks like he's going to protect his Axe Grinder here, though.
I think this is reasonable. Even if he forces a power-up out of Lou now, I think Lou just goes face at this point. I don't think he even challenges the Axe Grinder. He can just like double power up and be like, yeah, I'll just go face. What are you going to do about it? Or you clear the boss to negate value. It depends how important Lou feels this boss is. I like both lines. I like going all in here because like we were discussing, Lou is in such a powerful position right now. Or you could just take the safer route and then just clear the boss and play another guy.
Yeah, I don't mind clearing the boss just because there's always that chance that your opponent has a Gift of Steel. And if your opponent has to invest other resources, the Cypher's Wrath, Flame Burst, something that can deal more damage to your orb from a distance, that to me is a bigger downside than clearing the boss and having that Gift of Steel power it up.
Boss gets cleared. Massive Grizzly to deal with. 7-11 is pretty difficult for Red to answer. Ground Shaker will be able to make things a little easier in combination with that Flame Burst and the Axe Grinder, but we both know that Lou has a mountain of power-ups in his hand, and he can just Runin's Guidance next turn, go face, even clear the Ground Shaker if he wants, in such a fantastic position.
Yeah, and a little bit awkward. I don't even know if that's the right word for it, but because Lou played the Caretaker in this safer position off to the right, he doesn't have a land to go directly to the orb next turn, so it looks like he's going to continue to play this a little bit more control style, where he clears the creatures first and then pushes orb damage once he's ensured that his opponent's completely starved of doing anything on board.
Now, the one issue as going for +1 here for R2R, he opens up that well spot on the right-hand side. So Lou actually has the option now of taking a forest there, but with a Grimguard, an Axe Grinder, and a Ground Shaker to contest this Grizzly, he may opt to go for +1 into double guidance and just keep investing in this Grizzly. But there is also a Queensguard in hand, so he could take a more conservative route, just clear the Grimguard, play an aggressive forest, and wait till next turn, drop that Queensguard, and then start investing power-ups into that.
Yeah, even to go for +1 Faeria this turn and just play a single Runin's Guidance sets you up for +1 Queensguard or another big creature next turn. So I think either line is really fine here for Lou. He really wants to push towards having one of these, having the Grizzly collect or whatever the next creature is collect. Imperial Drain is a fantastic pickup, though.
The draw was pretty interesting here, because like we were saying, we had a lot of options to set up different lines for future turns, but the drain is pretty much the best thing he could have drawn, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely going to restrict what R2R is able to do here. Doesn't go for the buff in the end, so that will mean that the Ground Shaker is able to clear the Grizzly here with either Axe Grinder or Flame Burst follow-up. Does use the Axe Grinder, looks like should be another Axe Grinder coming down then from R2R.
Yeah, this is pretty solid for R2R. Clears the big threat, sets up another Collector, which sadly can't collect any Faeria, but a 4/3 is a reasonable sized creature to challenge the next thing that comes down. With the Flame Burst in hand, he has an option to deal 7 damage to a creature, and that might be enough to stabilize if Lou was to make, say, a Virgin Force this turn.
Yeah, the big thing with that, though, is this Imperial Drain is still very much restricting what R2R is able to do. If he had the Faeria collection, he'd have 1 extra right now, he'd gain another extra next turn, and you can maybe cycle that into another creature. But in this situation, it's just R2R having no Faeria, no follow-up. That Flame Burst being used is going to be the entire turn. So going for the draw, picking up the Axe Grinder, much better than having nothing on the board.
It is a little risky. And the reason is just because power-ups do exist, and it will extend the life of this Queen's Guard. So an Elderwood Embrace here would pump it up to 10 life, and then you're throwing 2 Axe Grinders and a Flame Burst at it. And is it really worth it? I didn't mind Flame Burst there. You lose initiative, or you just pass and play Cypher next turn. But I feel like 2 Axe Grinders is a little sad, really. I don't know. I guess he gets to collect next turn. It's just a difficult position for R2R to be in.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing of R2R going for more creature line is having 2 Axe Grinders on board. Against green, you're not going to have any removal. So this looks like R2R is guaranteed to be able to collect off of one of these wells next turn, and then +1 Cypher. If Cypher comes down in a position where it can clear off the Queen's Guard, it can clear off maybe this Mace Man that we see in Lou's hand here. If it can get 1 creature cleared, it becomes really difficult, because we've seen probably most of Lou's deck at this stage. I don't think there's going to be something like a Voice of Truth in here to deal with Cypher.
This is a very, very interesting line from Lou, going for an economy play. Setting up a double collector instead of applying more pressure. There was an opportunity to Elderwood there and have a really bulky Queen's Guard moving forward. But I guess the logic is, if R2R has the Cypher's Wrath, this 3-2, there's a chance he's not playing another creature, and then this Mace Man can double collect, which can potentially open up more lines for Lou in the future.
Yeah, it is quite interesting there, and of course, because Cypher's Wrath exists, it would have killed the Queen's Guard very easily. Maybe it is just, trying to ensure that once he draws into his other creatures, his Grizzlies, his Verduran Forces, he's able to play one every single turn.
I like Cypher in his current highlighted position. It's out of range of the Mace Man. Mace Man with a power-up would clear the Cypher's Wrath. Sticking it on the left-hand side of the orb here forces Lou to develop land in order to clear it. Now, Lou... Oh, wow, he goes to the forest. Interesting. I was actually expecting maybe double neutral and then double power-up to clear the Cypher, but I guess on the flip side, Cypher isn't gaining any life, so if he's running into this Queen's Guard, he is getting taken out and not getting his ability.
Yeah, the Flame Burst here would allow Cypher to kill the Queen's Guard, but Cypher's going to die in the process, so that snowball effect, like we were talking about, just isn't going to happen here. And now Lou just ahead in the economy game. He has this Mace Man double collecting on the right, and R2R has an Axe Grinder in just a single collection spot on the top left. So should continue to accelerate a lead here for Lou.
What do you think of Imperial Drain now? Once you've got a double collector, you don't want to be playing Imperial Drain when you're out collecting your opponent, but as soon as that Mace Man gets answered, well, if it gets answered, Imperial Drain just come back down. And then the economy's locked out once again for R2R. So it's just so much control here for Lou on board. When it comes to Faeria gathering as well, he's running away with the series.
Yeah, it's a good point there. It could be that Lou is going to start stepping up with this Mace Man, and once he gets it clear of the well, he'll go for the Imperial Drain there. But that was probably one of the better positions where, because he had collected off of his own side well and then stepped up to collect off his opponent's, could have then gone for the Imperial Drain, because it's a big swing of you collecting 2 and your opponent then not being able to collect anything. But looks like he's going to continue to play this slow economy game. Again, has that Imperial Drain, Rune, and Shrine combo in hand if this Mace Man does get cleared, to really reinforce that Faeria income.
And he now has a very interesting decision between push and face or go in with a Runin's Guidance or maybe a Tiki Caretaker to clear the boss, and so it doesn't get value from the Gift of Steel. And I can imagine Blue is going to go for that because it's consistent with his previous line when another boss came down. So we'll see. We'll see what he goes for.
He could unload his entire hand here, actually, the double buff and then the Queen's Guard combat trigger off of the orb would give him that extra 1 Faeria for Mace Man, but looks like it's just going to be Tiki Caretaker, and then the combat trigger is going to allow Verduran Force, which is also really nice.
This is so clean. Such a nice line there, setting up that Verduran Force, a fantastic draw from Lou, and look at this pressure. I don't know how R2R gets back into this match. It's too much. There's just too much.
Yeah, everything just out of range. The Firestorm is really solid here. A lot of creatures on board, so you get a lot of value out of it, but it doesn't clear the Mace Man, so you don't win the economy game. It doesn't clear the Queen's Guard, so you don't win, stabilizing your opponent's aggression. It's just not enough at this stage, and Axe Grinder not in a good position to clear the Queen's Guard with that Ground Shaker that's now picked up. So R2R just running out of options.
Even if you were to Firestorm and clear the Verdant Force, there's just so many creatures left over. Lou is able to just go face because there's no creatures stopping him anymore. There's no way R2R regains initiative from that line. It just doesn't do enough. So he's looking at a Grimguard line instead, maybe just to lock out something for a turn. Maybe try and collect some more Faeria to make a better Firestorm next turn. I don't mind that, but I think if Lou makes the read and hits the Grimguard with the Verdant Force, he's kind of in the same bad position he was in the previous turn. So it's a very, very awkward situation for R2R to be in.
Is there a way? I just don't see. I guess you could Ground Shaker directly in front of the Verdant Force, and you're just hoping that you can draw into something else next turn. Grimguard Underground Brigand to survive. It's just so awkward right now for R2R of not having anything that looks good enough to stabilize at this stage.
The one thing about Ground Shaker is it can clear the Mace Man now with a Firestorm follow-up. And we'll see what the Verdant Force goes for instead. Like, the Verdant Force might take care of the Axe Grinder. Might just go for the... we might see, say, a power-up on the Queen's Guard, and then just gonna go face with the Verdant Force. So there's a lot of different ways Luke can navigate this turn, but either way, 7 damage is going to the orb.
Yeah, and I'm expecting the Imperial Drain as well, just because that now locks R2R out of any follow-up AoE. Would have been up to 5 Faeria if that Axe Grinder had collected, and then the follow-up Firestorm or Ground Shaker would have both been possibilities, but really well played again by Lou, using these structures exactly when he needs them to. Calculated turns every single time of playing the buffs, trading creatures in the right position, playing this Mace Man in the economy spot rather than pushing more aggression has just really snowballed a massive advantage for him and takes a very clean looking 3-0 win.
And who would have thought Green Rush would lead this tournament? It has been completely absent in the Oversky expansion so far, but Lou brings it to this monthly cup, 3-0 versus R2R in game number 1, and so far, I would say Deepwood Grizzly is bear of the match. He did lots of work.
Yeah, that was really solid. Draws in the early game. I really like the way that Lou designed the deck to have these economy tools in there. Of course, Ruin's Shrine is something that's kind of always been considered in Green Rush, just because if you're not able to get to the wells, you're able to have that income, and the structure just goes down in a position where the downside of it, of giving your opponent that extra Faeria when it dies, it's just never contested, so it never dies. But then going for the Imperial Drain in there as the offset to lock your opponent out of Faeria, and then the Queen's Guard to have even more income. It's very cool deck building coming out from Lou.
Most Rush builds in Faeria need a strong economy card. We've seen Yellow Rush use Kaleem's Prayer as a way to leverage advantage through hand and economy. So, Prayer is a very powerful Rush tool. And we see Lou using both, like you said, the Ruin Shrine, Burst of Faeria. Don't really mind if your opponent gets it later, because you're going to put in a position where your opponent can't access it that easily. And of course, the Imperial Drain to lock out collection as well. And using combat abilities that gain Faeria also synergize very well with Imperial Drain. So old Red Rush builds that started using Boss and Brigand used to run Imperial Drain because they didn't collect Faeria. They used the combat abilities to generate economy in order to overwhelm their opponent.
Yeah, it's always very cool in the Rush style. Of course, you can counter that playing against a Rush by just getting even just one creature out on the outside. The way that Lou got his Mace Man there, if that was R2R being able to get his Axe Grinder in between the wells, you have so much more economy to build up into your Ground Shakers, your Firestorms, once you draw into those bigger creatures to keep up with the aggression. So it's just, again, the Imperial Drain would shut that down as well. So I'm very interested to see what else Lou has planned, but very cool to start off with a Green Rush and to play so well with it afterwards.
I think one thing to consider as well for Lou, this is a very strong position for him in Game 1 as one of the kind of favourites to win a monthly cup every time he participates. Being able to keep your other 2 decks secret is very important. Now some of his opponents are going to know that he has Green Rush to start off with, but there's nothing they can do about it because the first deck they've chosen is locked in for the rest of the tournament. So that matchup is never going to change. But being able to keep those other 2 decks secret is very, very important because now there's still a surprise factor to the lineup. He didn't reveal his entire game plan, his entire lineup strategy. Now their opponent's going to have to do some guesswork. And, first they need to get through this Green Rush.
Yeah, it's always really nice to keep what other decks you have hidden for the later rounds, especially when you're featured on stream. Your opponent is able to have that inside information, and you don't have any information about them. So really nice that he could get such a strong start.
Well, congratulations to Lou winning round 1. Unfortunate R2R, but he did lose to a fine player. Let's take a look at the bracket and see what else is going on here. So we have S of Dawn taking a 3-0 over Jay Yori, another Japanese representative. So it looks like the top European players performing very well. Zaraka taking it over Superb Blizzard. Unfortunately, that is a team kill there for those 2 players. They are on the same team, so very sad that it had to happen. Kissagram beating Iwin again, 3-1. Very nice. XYZ defeating Bananas. Teddy taking 3-0 over Satyrus, going up against Alvar in the next match. That should be a very exciting match. Lou90 beating R2R, then taking on another Japanese representative, Sunkichi. Very strong ladder player, been playing at the top end ladder for a very long time now. Keholic, a Korean representative, going to be going up against a Japanese representative in SKC, so the Asian region performing very well in this tournament so far. And then we have Sweetie and Kahilian, the French mirror match, coming down at the bottom end of the bracket, while Chief Bromdom and Rundong continue their match in round 1. So a lot of exciting games coming up, guys. The bracket is shaping up very nicely. Any matches do you think we need to keep our eye on to see what happens?
I'm really looking down at that Sweetie Kahilian. I mean, I mentioned how strong I think the bottom left corner of the bracket is, and Teddy versus Alvar is going to be a fantastic one in there, but Sweetie versus Kahilian should really shape up to be a very strong match. It's actually pretty cool. There's been no 3-2s, a lot of 3-0s in the opening round here. Looks like a lot of players bringing out something very strong to start off with, and then the other matches that have gone to 3-1, obviously the players, when they lose that one game, are able to come back strong against the final deck to close it out. So
yeah, I'm really excited to see how some of these games resolve. Like Teddy Alvar is such a nuts matchup. Kahilian Sweetie is another crazy one as well. Lou, he has another game coming up ahead. 3-0 from Sunkichi, so both players won 3-0. So that should be a very cool match as well. But we're going to go to a break, guys, and then we're going to bring you a round 2 game. So stay tuned, and we'll be back very soon.